And I was alone in my living room, and I just couldn't get all these thoughts out of my head going crazy, you know what I mean? Just how messed up my life had been, and I had texted people, like buddies, and I was like, man, you know, somebody come over and visit me, hang out with me, you know, I did not want to be alone. But nobody was responding, and finally I understood that God's given me a gift of writing, and He was wanting me to get this stuff out, you know. And so this is called More Than a Conqueror. I've always felt like writing was a form of release, kind of like excreting, like it's a private thing. You can't quite let go when someone is watching or listening, and this goes for any form of art in the process of creating. And why is it that artists hate so much to be alone? Knowing that they are and they always will be, and to be is what helps them excrete from the release and the ministry to those in need. But the universe will have its way. No matter how many hooks are baited to catch some company, when there is something divine meant for the many, none will bite and you will find yourself in solitary. It's frightening at times to tap in and begin to let it go, because once you start releasing, there's no stopping the flow. Even if you find yourself revealed to those gawking at the show, it would hurt you worse to stop at mid-flow, and this I know. So tonight, none do bite the hooks I've cast into flight, and I sit alone. But this is for me, this is for you. Just so excreting will produce something we both can use, and the world around us will be infected with the viral offspring it clones. So here goes. This is the strangest life I've ever known. My first vivid memory was of me and my brothers riding in a red Blazer, and I was about 3. We pulled into a small yellow one-story house, and a man with a beard peered out the window while smiling. At the door, he greeted us 3, soon to be 4, and asked if we ever had homemade milkshakes. We said no, and he used something called a blender to give us brain freeze headache. He found it amusing, and he laughed. This was later my stepdad. It is my understanding we lived before that in Kansas with my younger brother's father. I am told, though I don't remember, we were beaten, and once my mother understood the danger, she left him to protect us and to find something better. Next, I remember living in Wyoming in a complex. One time, my older brother and all his friends thought it funny to leave me alone in a new building being built. The doors were too heavy for me to open by myself, so they told me that ghosts were the sound that I heard I now know as the wind, but back then I was frightened. I do not know the hours that passed, but I know that it was the police that found me at last. You see, I began to lock doors from that point forward. I locked the bathroom. My stepdad had to break it through. I received my lashing for that. I locked the front door. My stepdad had to break it down into pieces and frames lay on the floor. I received my lashing for that. I locked the Buick car door when I was left inside alone. I remember the glass shatter as my stepdad broke the window, and I received my lashing for that. Then to California. We lived in a trailer park, and there are things that I will not speak of in this excretive art, things that I hold to those close to my heart. Then we moved to Wisconsin to live on a dairy farm. Growing up, getting dirty when apparently you have OCD is a little hard. Wearing hand-me-downs that don't fit, always a little too big, and the nice ones you want to wear every day. And when you do chores, you get them a little dirty. You kind of get used to the smell that soaks in, not realizing the rich kids at school whose parents work at the paper mill don't feel the same. Getting teased for what I wore and how I smelled and confirmed everything I felt, that I wasn't the same as all those who had a normal birth, youth, family, and a hand they'd been dealt. I soon realized I didn't fit in, and I always felt like a left-behind alien. Years later, after my salvation, I realized I was just a pilgrim, seeking a city not built by hands, but my home resided in paradise and the realm of heaven. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet, my friends. Being the outcast, the one stared at, I began to stare back. And my gift of discerning and prophetic intuition added to the distance them and I had. Those who were different and didn't fit in and sought me out, we fed each other's anger and rejection and doubt. Soon there were many things to entertain the brain, producing chemicals, communing with the lie, that running from the pain was embracing the truth, the universe, and maybe taking another drink and smoke and shot was just the answer we sought to gain. So let's fast forward past the overdoses, past the deaths, the lost bodies that no one knows, the suicide attempts, the dealing, the stealing, the innumerable women. Let's not discuss the arrests, the fights, beaten, left for dead, The one night choked out unconscious in my apartment, the car wrecks, the sleeping homeless on park benches. Let's not discuss the stack of bucks made and then spent and where it all went. Let's just accept that these stories would not be for anyone's benefit. I was already to die a fourth time at 19. I told God, you better come down and talk to me, or I'm coming up there to finally meet the one I knew was real, but I could never with my blind side see. He did. And then he saved me. But here's the truth. When you sever connection with everything you've ever known, even though your spirit is new, your flesh is not, and your mind, and those two make up your soul. And it takes time to realize the truth instead of the lie the devil told you that you're alone. So the first person I found who was a believer, I dug my paws in deep and I wouldn't let go, even though a prophet wept while telling me to do so. Let's now put the past decade in just a few trite words to wrap this up for the ADHD like me among us. In that time, a third of my life I've gone through more than I ever had thus. I've come to know the true Jesus. 2 marriages, 2 children, 2 divorces, 8 different houses, forced into 7 different career choices, bankruptcy, losing my company, the company that I created, 2 custody battles, 3 lawyers to pay because I had to, 2 extended families I extended hands to, my Uncle Troy arrested for manufacturing methamphetamine, only to escape, then be found in Florida, and then putting 5 officers in the infirmary, then doing 5 years there, and just now finally being extradited back to Oklahoma to finish out his sentencing. My older brother and younger brother, both arrested and still wanted and cannot come back here. I wrote them a poem, a prophecy called Stop It, but they were too deaf to hear the message, and that to me was so clear. My oldest daughter's mom goes to prison for drugs and fines and all the other charges that come with living your life in the blur. My Aunt Tina dies of colon cancer after fighting 8 years, 2 times in remission, and still it got the best of her. My Grandpa Matt dies shortly thereafter, a heart attack, and drives his truck onto the lawn of the funeral home. And somehow that brings laughter. You'd have to know him, though, to join into that banter. My younger brother's wife, my in-law sister, is murdered, thrown into a well with zip ties tied to her neck, feet, and hands as well. They found her 4 months later, and good thing my mom took her to the dentist so the records could tell who she was, and so her killer, her boyfriend at the time, while my brother, her husband, was in prison trying to get well. You see, he gets out of prison, and then he gets remarried. His father passes away then, doing heroin, and then doing heroin, and the one with him overdoses and dies in his arms, and he says goodbye to another friend. Just 2 months ago, no joke, 2 months ago, just 2 months ago, his new wife falls over dead due to organ failure. My older brother's adopted daughter, my niece, Madison, is murdered by some sick pervert, stabbed so many times and so bad that her casket had to be closed and covered. My oldest daughter is on the ice in Dallas. That's her. My oldest daughter is on the ice in Dallas and hears someone scream and turns to see a man fall from the 3rd story to his death on the ice right in front of her. A friend I grew up with in Wisconsin dies while he drives home from a club with his girlfriend and crashes his car. And another one up there hangs himself, commits suicide, and no one knows what the reason was for sure. My mother fights leukemia cancer for nearly 2 years, almost dies 2 times, and then 3rd finally overtakes her. Now ask me, am I overcome? I'm in my house with my children. I'm going to get up in the morning and kiss them. I'm going to get them ready for school. You see, there's no good thing in me other than that is Christ. There is no strength in me other than my Lord. All that I am is not who I was, only because I'm loved by Him. And I finally decided to open my eyes and see what He had done for all of us. And I want to be like my mother and believe that I and you can change the hearts of those around us by giving them what He offered freely and what all He is, and that is love. Thank you, guys. Wow.